They hauled in over $1 million worth of crab, but at what cost? Out in the brutal, ice-choked waters of the Bering Sea, one wrong move can mean disaster. Yet against all odds, the crew of the Brenna A pulled off one of the biggest, most dangerous hauls in Deadliest Catch history. Let us relive the moment that almost cost them everything. The Brenna A's high-stakes haul out in the freezing waters of the Bering Sea. Crab fishing isn't just a job, it's a wild, dangerous gamble. One mistake, one bad storm, and everything can go wrong in an instant. But for the toughest crews, the risk is worth it. Some of them have walked away with some of the biggest hauls ever seen on Deadliest Catch, millions of dollars in crab. But getting there, that's another story. But this season, one choice will mean the difference between fortune and survival. From brutal waves to broken equipment, these fishermen faced it all. They fought through Arctic storms, dodged icy death traps, and pushed their bodies to the absolute limit. But was the payout worth the punishment? Let's dive into one of the craziest, most intense hauls in the history of the show. One of the most jaw-dropping hauls came from the crab boat Brenna A. They weren't just fishing, they were betting everything they had, and the gamble paid off big time. By the end of their trip, the boat was loaded with over $1 million worth of crab. That meant each deckhand was looking at a life-changing payday. But before they got there, they had to survive some of the toughest conditions imaginable. For Captain Sean Dwyer, things weren't looking good at the start of the season. Their gear was falling apart, storms were slowing them down, and they were dangerously close to losing money instead of making it. The Brenna A wasn't the biggest boat in the fleet, which meant they had to work harder, push further, and take more risks than the others. And with time running out before the harbor froze over, Sean knew they had to find crab fast, or go home empty-handed. With no time to waste, Sean ordered the crew to drop every single crab pot they had. The clock was ticking, and if they didn't fill those pots fast, the season would be a disaster. Then the waiting game began. The pots had to sit in the icy depths, luring in as many crabs as possible. It was nerve-wracking. If they chose the wrong spot, they were doomed. Other boats had already been in the area. What if there was nothing left? After what felt like forever, it was time to pull up the first pot. The crew held their breath as the crane lifted it out of the water. And then, boom, it was packed with crab, more than they had seen in weeks. Relief flooded the deck. Maybe, just maybe, they had hit the jackpot. For the next 2 weeks, it was nonstop chaos. Crab pot after crab pot came up full. The deckhands worked like machines, sorting and stacking as fast as they could. Their hands were bruised, their backs ached, and exhaustion was setting in, but nobody was complaining. They were on fire. Even Captain Sean, usually glued to the wheelhouse, couldn't help but come out to celebrate. By the second week, the boat was sitting low in the water, packed with more crab than they had ever hauled before. When they finally did the math, the numbers were insane. Over $1 million in crab. Each crew member was looking at a payday that could change their lives. But just when they thought they were in the clear, the Bering Sea reminded them who was really in charge. On day 13, everything took a turn. The first sign of danger came when they pulled up a crab pot that was completely wrecked. Twisted metal, snapped lines. Then the weather reports came in. Ice was closing in fast, and captains all over the fleet were making a run for it. But Sean had a choice to make. Should they keep fishing or bail before they got trapped? He decided to push just a little further. They were so close to the finish line. A few more pots and they'd be golden. But the sea had other plans. The wind picked up fast, turning the waves into icy mountains. The deck was coated in freezing spray, turning it into a slippery nightmare. The crane groaned under the weight of the pots, swinging dangerously as the boat rocked back and forth. Every movement was a risk, but they kept going, determined to grab every last crab they could. Then disaster struck. A massive wave slammed into the boat, snapping the crane's wire with a sharp crack. A pot broke loose, crashing to the deck. The crew barely dodged it in time. The crane was down, which meant one thing: no more fishing. The season was over, whether they liked it or not. Now it wasn't about catching crab, it was about getting home in one piece. With the storm raging, every second counted. The Brenna A was heavy, riding low in the water, and the ice was closing in fast. Sean knew that if they didn't move quickly, they'd be stuck in the frozen sea for the rest of winter. And if that happened, all that crab in their hold wouldn't mean a thing.
The absolute biggest hauls on Deadliest Catch. The crab boat. Brenna A scored the biggest payout of the season on Deadliest Catch this week. A whopping $1.7 million haul that will land each surviving deckhand bonus checks upwards of $87,000. Despite close brushes with disaster, including possible bankruptcy, Captain Sean Dwyer gambled on untested waters and was rewarded with the largest crab catch in years. The lucrative relief comes not a moment too soon for Dwyer's unlucky crew, who have endured lost gear, white-knuckle storms, and back-breaking shifts with little financial gain so far this season. But their fortunes turned on a dime when Dwyer's gamble uncovered a bounty that could reshape lives. For Captain Sean Dwyer and his crew on the Brenna A, this season has been tough. Their equipment broke and they got stuck in bad storms, putting them behind schedule. Sean knows every day they don't catch crab means less money for the boat and his crew. As a young captain, he feels a lot of pressure. He has to make smart decisions to keep the boat running and pay his crew. The Brenna A is one of the smallest boats out there, so Sean has to take more risks to compete, but he won't risk anyone's safety. Finally reaching the fishing grounds, Sean gets his crew to start putting out their crab pots right away. They can't waste any time in these shallow waters near the shore. Soon the harbour will freeze completely, and they won't be able to get back to Dutch Harbour to sell their catch until spring. If they don't catch enough crab before then, it'll be a disaster financially. The crew works quickly, putting all 90 pots in the water in just a few hours, making a long line along the ocean floor. Now, the wait begins. The crab pots need to sit in the water for days to attract the migrating crab. Captain Sean spends this tense time thinking about what they can do. If the first set of pots catches a lot of crab, he'll feel better about their chances. But he's not sure if they're in the right spot. Other boats have already been here this season. What if all the crab are already caught? 24 hours pass with everyone on edge. Then the crane starts moving, lifting the first pot out of the water. The crew gathers around, feeling nervous. When the pot comes up, Sean finally breathes a sigh of relief. It's full of crab, more than they've seen in weeks. They quickly start sorting through the crab and baiting the pots again. With each pot they pull up, the crew starts to feel hopeful again. By nighttime, they've put the pots back in the water with even more optimism. As long as they keep catching crab like this, they have a good chance of making money. Over the next 2 weeks, the pots keep bringing in lots of crab. Deck boss Nick struggles to keep up with sorting them all. His hands are cut and bruised from handling the crab, but he can't stop smiling. After all their struggles, this good catch feels like a relief. The crew's mood goes from sad to happy as they keep pulling up pots full of crab. Even Captain Sean comes out of the wheelhouse more often, excited about the crab they're catching. They're slowly making a comeback, one pot at a time. By the middle of the second week, the hold of the Brenna A is almost overflowing with crates full of crab. The boat sits lower in the water, weighed down by the valuable cargo. They still need to fill dozens more pots, but everyone feels hopeful again. As they finish loading the last crates into the hold, First Mate Nick tells Sean the good news. If they sell the crab at the expected price, they'll make over $1.7 million in total, enough to give each deckhand $87,000. Sean can't help but smile at the thought. This money will make a big difference for everyone and might even convince the crew to stick around for another tough season next year. The string of good luck has completely turned their season around. But as they say, good luck doesn't last forever. The first sign of trouble comes on day 13 of the run. They pull up a pot that's been wrecked, crushed and broken. Sean curses quietly as he looks around at the worsening weather. The wind is picking up, and there are reports of ice packs moving closer. Other captains are already heading south to avoid getting stuck in the ice. Sean has to make a decision. Should they leave now and save themselves, or risk one more set of pots? By late afternoon, the Brenna is struggling in the rough seas, covered in ice from the freezing spray. The crew moves slowly in their heavy gear, fighting against the cold. Operating the crane is dangerous as the boat rocks back and forth. Pots swing dangerously on the rail, sometimes breaking loose and falling into the water. Progress is slow, but Sean can see that each pot is still full of crab. He decides they have to keep going, just a little longer, to fill up their hold. Their fate is sealed by a sudden disaster. A massive wave hits the ship while they're moving a pot, snapping the crane wire with a loud crack. The crew scrambles to avoid the dangerous wire and falling pot. Luckily, nobody gets hurt, but the crane is broken. They can't keep fishing without it. Sean has to make a tough call. They have to stop fishing and head back to harbor before the storm gets worse. As they finish hauling in the damaged pots, Sean feels a mix of emotions. They're leaving behind a lot of valuable crab, lost to the sea because of the accident. The season started out rough, but their luck turned around with the miracle string. Now they have to make it back to Dutch harbor quickly to sell their catch and make some money. If they're too late, Sean worries that the crew might quit, leaving the Brenna A in trouble for the rest of the season. It's a race against time, and Sean knows that the future of the boat depends on it. Jake gambles pots in freezing waters. As the Brenna A slowly makes its way back to harbor, other captains in the fleet face their own challenges in trying to salvage their seasons. Jake Anderson, aboard the Saga, takes a big risk by heading north into more dangerous waters closer to the advancing ice pack. The potential rewards are huge, but so are the risks. On the Saga, Jake and his crew get ready for the journey ahead, keeping a close eye on the weather forecast. They've been hearing rumors about a big crab migration happening late in the season, and other ships disappearing over the horizon in search of it. But communication is spotty this far north, with only a few snippets of information coming through on the radio. Still, the stories of massive crab catches are enough to get Jake and his crew excited. For the Saga's crew, frustration grows as their own season hasn't been going well. They're way below their quota, and their bank accounts are getting empty. Every new rumor from the north makes them more resentful as they struggle in areas where there aren't many crab left. When Jake finally decides to set sail towards the rumored crab grounds, they're ready to take a chance at redemption. After sailing 120 miles, they finally find what they're looking for on the edge of the compass rose. This far north, the magnetic forces from the poles make the compass act strangely. Radar images of ships and icebergs come and go, their locations uncertain. Giant waves hint at storms somewhere nearby, hidden by the perpetual darkness. In the darkest hours, the ocean and sky blend together, creating an ominous atmosphere. Despite the challenges, the pots continue to yield abundant catches. Each one brings up 30, 50, sometimes even 70 keepers, their golden shells shimmering under the harsh lights. The crew, despite their exhaustion, is swept up in the rhythm of their work, sorting, baiting and stacking the never-ending stream of crab. But amidst the frenzy, tragedy strikes as one of the crew members, Nick, falls victim to a vicious crab bite, ending his season. Still, the work must go on, with so much wealth waiting to be claimed. In between sets, Jake retreats to the wheelhouse, keeping a close eye on the weather reports and listening to distress calls on the radio. Reports of accidents and mishaps fill the airwaves, serving as grim reminders of the dangers they face. But Jake knows that every setback means more crab for those who persevere, a harsh reality of life in these unforgiving waters. By the fifth day, the Saga is straining under the weight of their bountiful catch. With storm clouds looming closer, Jake makes the decision to set one last string before heading back to harbor. The crew, bolstered by renewed optimism, works tirelessly as freezing rain lashes the deck. First mate Nick watches anxiously from the crane, hoping that this final string will bring them even more success after weeks of hardship. Despite the challenges they've faced, there's a sense of hope and anticipation as they await the outcome of their final gamble. The crushing heartbreak hits the crew hard when disaster strikes. Nick spots the danger first, a looming iceberg heading straight for their string. He barely manages to shout a warning before the massive block of ice slices through their line, dragging away 9 pots and almost 30% of their precious cargo in just 15 seconds. Shock and cold gripped the crew as they watched their hopes vanish into the dark depths. Was their risky venture all for nothing? The ice and storm seemed to close in on them, punishing their audacity for venturing into this dangerous territory. Jake rushes to the wheelhouse, his face etched with anguish. He knows they won't be able to recover the lost pots. They're crushed and buried beneath the drifting ice. With a heavy heart, he steers the saga back toward home, leaving their dreams of fortune and glory behind. They still need to beat the storm headed for Dutch Harbor to have any chance of making a profit. Each crew member, exhausted but hopeful, knows that if they can pull it off, they might still earn their $87,000 reward. But it's a price paid in blood and sweat, the true cost of turning a profit in the harsh world of the Bering Sea. As the saga retreats south, the crew reflects on their daring venture. Enduring 2 weeks of hardship and risking it all on the whims of the sea, they know that many other boats would have given up long ago. But with one final string, there's still a glimmer of hope that their ordeal might be worth it if they can outrun the storm closing in behind them. Jake steels himself against the mounting tension as the saga charges through the tumultuous waves, aiming slightly east of south, with Dutch Harbor still 300 miles distant. There's no room for course corrections now. It's a race against time. They must reach safety before the fury of the Arctic storm descends, or risk being trapped by the advancing ice of Barrow Shoals. With the throttles pushed to the limit, the saga hurtles forward into the unknown. On the second night, the radio crackles to life once more, and First Mate Nick strains to make out the frantic voice pleading for assistance amid the static. Another ship, trapped in ice, their calls for help desperate and urgent. But the details are unclear, and Nick's memory fails him as he tries to recall the ship's name mentioned back in Dutch Harbor before they departed. The distress calls hint that the ice may be closing in faster than anticipated. Jake receives the ominous news with a steady resolve. Despite the uncertainty, he remains focused on their current course and speed, knowing that any deviation could spell disaster. They're committed to riding the current straight into the harbor mouth without pause. The crew's hearts race as they grapple with the weight of their decision. Stopping now could mean losing everything, but forging ahead risks lives. Amid the roar of the engines, there are no easy answers, only the relentless push toward their goal. The saga finds 435 crabs in one pot. After their tough journey through dangerous weather and ice up north, the tired crew of the saga is relieved to be heading home to Dutch Harbor. They faced risks, losing some gear and almost some crew members to the ice, but Captain Jake believes it was worth it. Their big catch should make up for their disappointing season, as long as they can safely bring it back before an approaching storm. Their mood lifts when they finally see the harbor lights on the horizon after days of rough seas. They look forward to solid ground and a hot meal after enduring so much. Passing the breakwater buoy, they dream of relaxing with drinks and maybe even enjoying some coconut shrimp at the local bar. But their relief is short-lived. Jake finds an urgent message from the cannery manager demanding they haul one more string of pots before unloading. Jake and his injured deckhand Nick are frustrated. They were so close to rest and relaxation, but now they have to deal with more hard work. However, Jake knows he can't refuse. If they don't comply, the cannery might reject their catch as too late, even if they make it before the agreed cut-off date. Reluctantly, they get back to work, deploying the final string of pots into the harbor. They just hope this last task goes by quickly. In contrast to the rough seas, the harbor is calm as they haul in the short line. The first pot doesn't have much, just 2 good crabs among the small ones. They feel annoyed. It seems like this extra effort might not be worth it, but they stick to the rules and keep pulling. Then, something hits the side of the boat as they pull up the 4th pot. Deck boss Nick looks at Captain Jake, wondering what it could be. They pause the hoist and Nick looks over the edge. spotting a huge lump of wire mesh just below the surface. Their irritation turns to excitement as they realize they've hit the jackpot. All tiredness disappears as the crew gathers around, eager to see what's inside. As they bring the trap up, they're amazed to see it's packed with crabs, more than they've seen in all their previous pots combined. Captain Jake can't believe it as he watches from above. The crew gets to work, opening the trap and pulling out crabs as fast as they can. They work together, anticipating a big payday. With a loud noise, they tear open the side of the trap, and crabs spill out onto the sorting table. There are so many that one crew member gets soaked in crabs. Amidst laughter and excitement, they count over 400 good crabs just on the table. Gradually, everyone snaps out of their daze. They use their bare hands to quickly fill crates with the valuable crabs, which are prized in Asian cuisine. It feels like a surreal rush as more and more people join in to help. Captain Jake keeps the crane moving, lifting each pot while crabs flood the deck. After 40 minutes, they've emptied all the pots, and there's a huge pile of packed crates on board. As they start unloading, there's a sense of relief and gratitude among the exhausted crew. After the tough weeks they've had, finding such a treasure trove right near home feels like a miracle. They've caught nearly $60,000 worth of crabs just outside the harbor, while storms rage far to the north. It's an incredible turnaround. With this unexpected bonus, the crew starts bantering again, enjoying their well-deserved rewards. Once the last crates are offloaded, Jake takes a moment alone in his cabin to think. How did they not notice such riches so close by, despite passing through the harbor countless times? It's a mystery, but fishermen don't dwell on such questions. They just seize opportunities when they come. Tonight, they've received a gift of 435 amazing creatures, and Jake accepts it gratefully. Despite knowing there are still challenges ahead, storms, ice, and long shifts, Jake feels content for now. With warm food in their stomachs and the promise of more big paydays, the serious captain of the saga considers venturing out into the sea one last time, now that there's still some mystery left to explore. Northwestern catches. Huge 700-pound of crab haul after 2 weeks of disaster. The Bering Sea crab fleet faces more problems as winter gets colder. On the FV Northwestern, Captain Sig Hansen deals with challenges that could end his 40-year career. Their troubles start when the port engine suddenly stops working while they're setting gear in new fishing grounds up north. It emits smoke, but Sig cuts the power to prevent a fire, leaving them stranded in icy waters. They wait for hours to be rescued and finally make it to St. Paul Harbor with only one engine working. But the damage is severe. The electrical system is ruined, the control panel is destroyed, and even the navigation computer is fried. Although the engines are okay, they can't use them. The worst part is that the emergency transponder, which is required by law, is melted and useless. They start repairs right away, but they face bureaucratic obstacles. Without the transponder, the Coast Guard won't let them sail. Sig orders a replacement, hoping it'll arrive quickly, but bad weather halts air traffic, delaying the replacement transponder's arrival from the Alaskan wilderness. Every morning, Sig hoped for better weather as he checked for updates from the supply clerk. 7 long days went by while the ice swallowed up the fishing grounds they had just found. The ice destroyed their lines, taking away the valuable catch they had worked hard to find. Sig felt hopeless, thinking about all their effort going to waste while they were stuck in port, unable to work. But on the 8th day, the winds calmed down, and supply planes were finally able to fly. They got a new transponder delivered and installed quickly. At dawn, Sig gave the order to set sail again, even though they had lost a week of fishing time. Despite losing all their previous traps to the ice, Sig planned to set new ones in better areas. However, the Bering Sea didn't make it easy. Rough waves caused icy seawater to freeze their empty crates, making them useless. The deck became slippery with ice, making it dangerous to work. But morale improved once they started catching crabs again. Despite the tough conditions, they filled crates quickly. They spent another week in the cold before facing another setback. Huge waves knocked loose their direction finder antenna, cutting off their navigation systems. They had to rely on a backup transmitter until they could fix it. The weary crew retreated to the nearest safe harbor, longing for rest but fearing more lost time. Thankfully, fixing the direction finder antenna only took a few hours, and they were soon headed back into the winter seas. Despite facing numerous setbacks, they finally had some success. They pulled in their first catch from the icy waters, filled with valuable crabs. Despite the freezing waves crashing over the sides of the boat, they worked tirelessly, fueled by the chance for redemption. As they worked, facing one challenge after another, Captain Sig remained hopeful. Even when the crane motor overheated and shut down and the hydraulics seized up, he refused to give up. With the engineer fixing the motor and the deck boss organizing rest breaks for tired fingers, Sig climbed up to the crow's nest to survey the situation. Looking out over the dark ocean, Sig felt the sting of frostbite in his eyes. Despite all the setbacks they faced this year, he refused to believe they were cursed. After 50 years on these waters, defying death time and again, he wasn't about to let bad luck break him or his crew. There was still a chance for success, even after all their defeats. With renewed determination, the gears grind back into motion, pulling up even heavier strings than before. Cheers erupt as they confirm they've hit the jackpot. A massive migration of 2-pound Bering crabs, a late-season surge that few boats ever encounter. This one string could make their entire tough journey worth it. Captain Sig's strength seems to flow into his crew as they work faster than ever, despite the challenges. Even when the crane is overloaded and block ice falls from the rigging, they keep going. The freezing air and bruised fingers don't slow them down as they anticipate a huge payday. They're hauling in an impressive 700 pounds of crabs every hour, while most other boats have already given up and headed south. The crew can't keep track of how many crates they've filled, but the hold is overflowing with valuable crabs. The promise of a big payoff keeps them going, pushing through fatigue and danger. As another heavy pot surfaces, the crew's triumphant roar fills the air. Nothing can stop them now. With the potential for a huge payday, they're unstoppable. Not one person on board gives in to the cold or pain. They're all focused on the prize. Fleet nets, over $13 million by the end of the season. As the Alaskan winter gets harsher, the Bering Sea crab fleet rushes to catch the last crabs of the season before the ice takes over. Most ships have already given up and headed back, unable to fill even half of their quotas. But a few tough ships like the FV Time Bandit are determined to keep going despite the storms and mechanical problems. The Time Bandit, already loaded with a good harvest of Apilio crabs, faces uncertainty as they haul up their last pots. Captain Jonathan worries that they might find nothing but empty shells and small crabs after sitting idle for a week. But they're determined to make the most of every opportunity. As they prepare to pull up the first pot, tensions are high. Deck boss Eddie warns everyone to be careful with the swinging equipment and slippery ice. The freezing spray has turned the deck into a dangerous place to work. Meanwhile, Jonathan keeps a close eye on the radar, watching as the ice floes get closer to their fishing area. It's a risky situation, but their worries vanish when they see the first pot full of big orange crabs. Jonathan rushes out of the cabin, grinning from ear to ear as they continue to pull up pot after pot full of crabs. The crabs have been trapped for over a week, too sluggish and cold to escape from their cages. It looks like the hard work of the captain and his experienced crew is finally paying off. As the crew celebrates their successful haul, their joy is tempered by the approaching storm front and the advancing ice pack, just 70 miles to the west and closing in fast. With each pot emptied, they must haul the next one even faster, working at a frantic pace to keep up. The crew feels a sense of urgency, as if they're racing against some unseen threat. This feeling is familiar to fishermen, They know the sea doesn't easily give up its treasures. If they don't work hard enough, the sea can take back what they've caught. The ice is getting closer, and the crew can see ghostly shapes emerging from the spray ahead. The freezing ice locks together, making it hard for even the crabs to move. Captain Jonathan shouts orders over the noise of the turbines, telling the crew to shorten the lines to avoid losing them to the encroaching ice. The crew works tirelessly despite the freezing cold and the constant threat of disaster. It's a relentless battle against the approaching doom, where victory is never guaranteed. Panic erupts as a massive slab of ice crashes into them unexpectedly, halting crane operations and burying thousands of tons of equipment beneath it. It's a harsh punishment for those who thought they could take riches from the sea without consequence. Amidst the chaos, Eddie's screams are heard over emergency communication channels. There's no time to salvage any treasures. The floating ice has no mercy for those who dare to intrude. The crew must scatter and evacuate before the advancing ice crushes them. Captain Jonathan orders the evacuation, feeling grief as they cut loose half of their catch to sink into the ocean. They try to move away using stern thrusters, but they have little control over their fate as the ice closes in. As the ice rams into the ship, there are deafening impacts and thunderous sounds echoing across the hull. Despite their experience and preparation, they realize that the northern seas are unforgiving and cannot be tamed by human technology. This sudden reminder of their vulnerability serves as a humbling lesson in the face of nature's power. Then, as suddenly as the chaos began, the sea opens up a narrow path for the humble crab boat to escape. Without pausing to question how or why, the crew races south towards the safety of the harbor, leaving the banshee chorus of ice behind them. 18 hours have passed since they entered this terrifying arena, but now they're free, collapsing in exhaustion but overwhelmed with gratitude for their miraculous deliverance. Questions about whether they were truly blessed or just lucky are drowned out by the sound of their own heaving breaths returning to normal. As they sail southward, leaving the haunted latitudes behind, they reflect on their ordeal. They may be fewer in number, but they're richer in treasures, both above and below deck. There's no need for accusations or doubts among the crew. What they've witnessed leaves no room for argument. They're content with the knowledge that there are safer seas and seasons ahead, and they'll be able to return to port and pubs full of laughter soon. Captain Jonathan quietly embraces his family, grateful for their survival and looking forward to what lies ahead. With their holds overflowing, their legacy is secure, and there are many more stories left to tell as the Time Bandit sails on. Thanks for watching. Like this video and subscribe to our channel for more updates. And while you're still here, click the video on your screen for more mind-blowing videos.